obviously, we're looking at now. As you said, England have played 2 games. They've lost one and they've won one. Peter, what did you make of the New Zealand match? Because it started off, I was thinking, it started off pretty well, but I just felt by the end of that innings, I just kind of thought, I never really felt that was enough, really. After
No,
the way we started, I just never, I
it
never
was
thought that would
never
be
enough.
enough
It was never
against,
going to be enough.
you know.
That total was never going to be enough to beat New Zealand. Um, it's been a contrast of emotions, isn't it? When I've been talking to my dad about the cricket, and when we were speaking about the New Zealand game, there was a bit of, oh well, that's not gone well, has it? And a bit of disaster in the air. And then in the Bangladesh game, it was almost the opposite. It's like, oh well, this has gone very well. And let's not forget Bangladesh have beaten us in one day cricket quite recently in Asian conditions. Um, yeah, I think what the issue was with the New Zealand when with batting is that we kind of got out to some really poor shots. I think a good example of that was Livingston, actually, and Harry Brook and Livingston were two really good examples of this. In that Livingston was being sort of tucked up a little bit by the spinner. I think it was Santner, and tucked up by the spinner and was struggling to get the ball away. And in a one-day game, you have time and room to, if there's an over that doesn't go your way, you kind of just block it off and move on to the next one. Fine, whatever. He's got Joe Root down the other end. I'm imagining, I can't really remember, but I'm sure it was Joe Root down the other end who was going well. Leave it to him for the next over. Take it on the chin. And instead, he gives this wafty little flick down to long on. It's a comfortable catch. And then the over's doubly worse because it's not gone for many runs, and the wicket has fallen too. So it was the decision making. I don't think was quite there from some high quality batters. Uh, Harry Brook hit 3 balls for the boundary, 4-6-4, and then tried to do it again. And I know it's the cliche of if he'd hit it for 6, he would have been a hero, but he didn't. He didn't. He got out, and I think too many wickets fell too consistently to just poor shots. We'd get in, we'd get a little bit of a partnership going, and then someone would gift their wicket away. The only person that really, I think could walk away from that batting display against New Zealand with their head held high was Joe Root, who proved immediately to anyone that doubted him that he's still a world-class operator in any conditions, even if he's coming into the tournament in a terrible run of form. But also, viewers and listeners of the podcast, there is one person here that you can blame for Joe Root getting out. Oh, like if you think it's you at home, if you think you stood up and went to go and do something else, and come back and the wicket was taken, it's not you. It's not you. There is a man on my screen right that might have something to say about how Joe Root got out. Do you wanna let them know, Paddy?
um, do you know what? I'd feel too embarrassed. You'll have to do it.
Well, we were watching it along together and messaging each other, and I think the message is Joe Root is going well. And well, you know what happened like almost immediately after that. And yeah, so Paddy,
Yeah.
how do you feel for getting Joe Root out?
I mean, I feel personally responsible. Obviously, but yeah, I think it was funny because I think I'd literally text you that, and then I think by the time I sort of tuned back in, he'd he'd gone. Like he wasn't even like walking off. He was back. He was back in the change room, and I'm thinking, oh god.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I'm
But
very
what do you
sorry.
think? What do you think? So the batting was kind of a bit poor. Bowling, what were you thinking on that front?
I mean, I think the batting was, you look at that scorecard, and it's the prime example of pretty much everybody getting the start. And as you said, just not taking that few balls to kind of plan the next part of the innings. I think that happened a lot. Um, I think Livingston, he was a good example of that, where he looked so set, he looked so ready to push on and be there for a good amount of time, and he's not doing it. When it came to the bowling, I think although they weren't given a great total to work with, I do think it was a bit flat. And I think it could have been better, but at the same time, I mean, you had players there who, I mean, we're all thinking, when Will Young went relatively cheap, relatively early, you're thinking, okay, we've got a bit of we've got a bit of a game on here. Um, but then obviously Rashin Ravindra and Devon Conway went, nah, there'll be no drama. We'll get the job done. And yeah, to win a World Cup game with the best part of 14 overs left is just, it doesn't matter who you're playing, it's complete domination.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think it was a case of we tried. I look at the scorecard. We had six bowlers, all tried. Tried to do what they do, and it just, I don't know. It never really looked like it was going to work. I mean, even after the early wicket, it seemed like as soon as Ravindra got set, which was relatively early because he ended up getting 120 odd off 96. It just, they didn't look in danger. And I think even if there was a couple of wickets towards the end, you look at their lineup, and I don't really think they would have wobbled because you had the likes of Tom Latham, Darryl Mitchell, Glenn Phillips. There's a lot of quality in that
yeah.
top six, top seven for New Zealand,
Well, it's a
and I just
team. It's a
think
team that have played twice without Kane Williamson and just looked excellent, which is
yeah,
scary to think, really.
that's the thing. I mean, you look at how many runs that batting lineup's getting, and Kane Williamson isn't there. So yeah, I think it was a case of, I think we met a very good New Zealand team on a very good day for New Zealand because they were just, I mean, they didn't put a foot wrong.
No.
I think it was a case of we got off to a slow start, and when you're playing against a team who are who have that much quality, you can't have a slow start or a slow day because you'll get batters, and that's exactly what's happened.
Yeah, I think it was a little unnerving that Mark Wood went for 11 runs and over. He's meant to be the one that comes in and clears through a gap in the order, but no, he didn't. He didn't look like. And I think you're right. No one really looked like they were going to get a wicket. Um, they just look so in control. The conditions just look so good for batting, and I think we ran out of ideas quite quickly, which is concerning. I think, but I'd like to think that the Bangladesh game kind of um, kind of brought a little bit more order and normality to proceedings. And before we go into Bangladesh, though, we must mention about the ridiculous emptiness of a stadium that was chosen as the first game of a World Cup. Um, first of all, how big is it? Second of all, how many people were there? Third of all, how did that happen for a first game of a World Cup? It's a bit of a shocker there, really, from India, I think.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that the ground itself is just. I mean, you know, I've sort of, well, so we've both sort of grown up like kind of thinking that the biggest cricket ground what there is the MCG. That was, to me that was always, when it's the Ashes in Australia, the Boxing Day Test. You've got 90,000 people in a cricket ground, and even just watching that on TV, you just can't really, you can't comprehend how big it is. This new ground, I think it holds like another 30 or 40,000 on top
Yeah, it's
of the
massive.
MCG, and it's crazy because it was a big topic of conversation, rightly so, because as you said, it's the start of a 50 over cricket World Cup. The sort of every cricketing fan in the world pretty much will have their eyes on this game, and yeah, it was horrible. Like, it's annoying because obviously, in relation to, I think there'll have been a good crowd there. I know the statistics got released, and I think for it was I think it was at least 20,000. Which, if you take that out, the fact that it's in a massive stadium, it's not a bad crowd.
Yeah,
But
I
when you
mean that
think
would
about it
fit in
as
most stadiums in England, wouldn't it?
exactly, yeah. But if you put that in the context of the first game of a World Cup and in a stadium what is 6 times bigger than that crowd number, it's going to look disappointing, and it did. And I don't know if it's a case of, you know, it was a work day, it was a working day, so there was a lot of people over in India wouldn't have been able to go to the cricket, or maybe they just didn't really fancy it because it wasn't India playing. But
That's my thought exactly. It wasn't India, so they weren't as bothered.
yeah, all I can think is, if that was, say, for example, if it was, I don't know, let's say South Africa, New Zealand in the opening game of a World Cup in England. I know obviously the grounds will be way smaller, but I just can't help but think that they'll be pretty much sold out. And to not even to have not even a quarter full in this brand new stadium at the start of a tournament, it wasn't a good start. I don't think I kind of think they would have been better off saving that big ground for India's first game. I
Yeah,
think then
yeah,
we would have had a better idea because it just didn't get off to a good start in
yeah. I
terms
know.
of
I know. India are traveling most of the tournament, and I think that they are playing Pakistan in that stadium. So that is something to look forward to. Um,
yeah,
you
and
know,
that has the potential to be one of the best spectacles ever in
yeah.
in, in World
So
Cup
long as
cricket.
Javo doesn't get in again and ruin it. Um, there's a lot of talk. We're not wanting to dwell on this bit too much, but there was a lot of talk about how Java managed to get a visa and no Pakistani journalists have got a visa. But
Yeah,
someone else can cross that bridge for us, I think.
someone far more qualified and in a better position could probably explain that.
Yeah, yeah. So do you want to have a chat about Bangladesh then? That game? What
Yeah,
were your
so
thoughts?
well, I mean, I think it was a perfect way to bounce back. Really, I think because we lost so heavily, I think we had to come back strong for the net run rate, but also just for morale. Because I think it was one of these games where I think even if we'd won and been like, being taken to the last over or the last 5 overs or something, I feel like there would have been a lot more doubt still over the team. And I think having playing 2 games and having that kind of cloud over you, it's not good in any sort of circumstance. So I think, yeah, I think we came back in the best way possible, really. You know, there was runs for all the top three. I thought Root looked brilliant again. Um, Good 50 for Bairstow, but I mean, the man of the moment had to be Dawud Malan because you know he keeps on. It seems that every now and again people are like, "Oh, how is he still getting in the England team?" That's why. It's innings like that at the top of the order when I mean he went. It's normally Milan has a bit of a slower strike rate, and a bit of a slower rate. He kind of he isn't normally kind of one of the gung ho players who we have in the middle order, but he got his 140 off less than 110 balls, so he can do that as well. And I just think having him at the top of the order is it's so important because he's such a well, I'd say an anchor, but he's more than an anchor because he can push on and get runs quick as well. And he just seems like an ideal player to have up there. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Peter.
No, I agree. I think what people forget as well is that if given time, he catches up. Um, and he captured well. Evidence was the fact that his 100 was of a quicker strike rate than the number of balls that he faced. So that was that. He can put bat to ball. He can hit sixes, which he did. In a couple of those middle 30 to 40 overs. He did pick up the pace a bit. He also doesn't play silly shots really. He's not a slogger. He's a stroke player, and that helps him at the top of the order control an innings. Helps England control an innings too. When you've got the pure like brutishness of Bairstow at times that just picks up anything short of a length and sends it flying into the leg side for six. The potential of Harry Brook to do the same. Joss Butler, Liam Livingstone, all these players are players that can be around Milan and Root to who will play the job of that anchor, which I think is their absolute forte. They're both exceptionally good at it, and you're right that we were much better in this batting performance. Obviously, with the likes of Milan and Bairstow and Root giving us majority of the wickets runs. Do you think Livingston is living an interesting life in the middle of the order? He picked up some runs at the end of the English summer, but he's looked a bit quiet. So in these first two games, there's a bit of talk about Moeen instead of Livingston as the spinning all-rounder option. Do you think there might be a change when we come out next fixture?
Yeah, I mean, I can see it. I think the one of the benefits of having such a good quality squad is knowing that you can rotate players, not just because of injury. It's knowing that if you want to if you want to bring something different to a certain match, you've got the option to. And I think being able to bring in Moeen Ali is it's a brilliant situation to be in. I think if it is sort of a straight swap in the order, yeah, I mean you'd have Livingston down there. It's what 6, 7, and having been able to bring in Moeen Ali and have him in that position after all that quality in the top six is just it's brilliant. But yeah, I can see it happening. I kind of like to see it because yeah, I don't think Livingston's quite got going with the bat. I know he picked up a wicket against Bangladesh, which obviously is good because he is there as an all rounder. But yeah, I'd be more than happy to see Mo and Ali come back in there when we play Afghanistan.